Did you know the U.S. accidentally dropped atomic bombs on Spain? Yep, you heard that right. In 1966, Palomares became ground zero for a nuclear disaster that could have wiped out millions. But that's not even the craziest part. Decades later, veterans and locals are still fighting for justice. Dive into the shocking Palomares incident and find out why it's making headlines again. One incident which still causes controversy to this day is the 1966 Palomares incident, when U.S. planes accidentally dropped atomic bombs over Palomares, a small fishing town in Spain. The incident was a potential catastrophe which would have killed millions on the spot, yet it miraculously didn't result in that. Nevertheless, as much as the authorities of both countries tried to play down the event at the time, the truth is that the consequences of the plutonium contamination spread in Palomares not only affected its inhabitants, but also extended to the U.S. court, where veterans who were involved in the cleanup have spent years fighting for their rights. So what happened to Palomares, and why is it relevant again? What are the consequences suffered by people actually involved in this unfortunate incident? What about the residents of Palomares? Keep watching to find out. The date 17 January 1966 would be remembered forever by the people of Almeria, a province in Spain. Everything started when a B-52 Stratofortress bomber was flying over the Mediterranean fishing town Palomares, while engaged in routine refueling from a KC-135 Stratotanker at an altitude of around 31,000 feet, almost 10,000 meters. The aircraft were actually involved in Operation Chrome Dome, which took them near the border of the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The process went as wrong as it could go, as the bomber and the tanker collided in midair, igniting the KC-135 fuel while the B-52 broke up. Several people from both planes died right when the accident occurred, with only survivors being 3 out of 7 crew members who were in the bomber. The situation was already a tragedy by then, but it quickly worsened, as the bomber was carrying 4 hydrogen bombs designated B-28. All of these fell around Palomares, with 2 of them falling in the ocean and the other 2 around the town, detonating on impact. Even though the explosives were luckily non-nuclear, the radioactive waste was spread in certain areas. Following the mid-air accident and the resulting waste of radioactive soil around Palomares, authorities from Spain and the U.S. rushed to take care of it, though everything was maintained at as low a profile as possible, for obvious reasons, including controlling panic among the population. According to the New York Times, the Spain-based U.S. Army forces were transported to Palomares in secrecy, with most of them not knowing that the mission they were to be employed on included cleaning up radioactive waste. According to a report by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, the 3-month-long cleanup work included both civilians and military personnel. Reports were that around 1,700 tons of contaminated soil were taken to Southern California, but were forgotten afterwards. As read on the website of the European Parliament, 435 hectares were contaminated with plutonium from the non-nuclear explosions. Yet only 3% was cleaned up by the U.S. While the cleanup work was still in process, one of the undetonated bombs was recovered, but another remained lost for months, despite the efforts of the U.S. authorities. However, back on the day of the disaster, a fisherman named Francisco Simo Orts had seen exactly where in the ocean the 4th bomb had dropped and promised to recover it with just a boat and a fishing net. By that point, U.S. personnel were running out of options given how their submarines had already failed to locate the bomb. Francisco, later nicknamed Paco the Bomb Man, guided the recovery crew to the site where he saw the bomb fall a couple of months before, successfully helping them locate and recover it. It didn't take long before the national and international press wrote articles about Paco, though the recognition didn't translate into any sort of monetary compensation for him, as reported by local news sites. In the end, The quick cleanup work was finished in some secrecy, though inevitably the incident eventually became widely known around the world. When the cleanup's finished, the then U.S. ambassador to Spain, Angier Biddle-Duke, washed himself on the beach in Palomares to demonstrate that the place was safe to be. However, a lot was still to be revealed about the Palomares plutonium incident. Despite the passing of time, the Palomares incident is far from being forgotten, not only by the inhabitants of the town, but also by the people in the U.S. who were directly affected by it. According to the New York Times, many of the American military personnel involved in the cleaning and collecting of the radioactive soil from Palomares weren't appropriately protected, some allegedly touching the contaminated earth with their bare hands. This goes against what was reported by the Air Force, that safety measures were followed by the 1,600 people who were involved in the cleanup, and that the radioactive levels weren't harmful. Dozens of those now veterans were eventually diagnosed with a variety of cancers, though it has been a difficult journey for them to be recognized as victims of exposure to radioactive material. Regarding the people of Palomares, in 2023, France 24 reported that not much was known about possible victims of radioactive contamination, but they were still affected in other ways. Inhabitants of the town have been affected by expropriations of their land due to contamination, yet financial compensation wasn't included. As well, Spanish authorities have allegedly kept most documents related to the incident in total secrecy. While the Palomares incident remained a constant worry for those who felt their health affected by it, including the town's inhabitants, the case was almost forgotten for several decades. It wasn't until the 1990s that the Spanish government pressured the U.S. to survey Palomares again, to identify any contaminated ground, and also requested the funding of a health program offered, but actually rarely funded, by the American government decades before. According to reports, some of the surveyed areas were highly contaminated, leaving no option but to fence the affected areas in 2004. This also led the Spanish government to request a thorough re-cleansing of the land, which was positively received by President Joe Biden's administration, as reported in 2023. Finally, in 2021, the U.S. came up with a positive resolution in a class action case in the Court of Appeals for Veteran Affairs regarding the eligibility of veterans involved in the Palomares incident to access healthcare benefits, though the case is still active to this day. With that being said, the Palomares incident is sadly not a thing of the past, but a serious issue that is still affecting those who were involved in it, in some way or another. Unfortunately, nuclear accidents aren't that rare. So, what's your opinion of nuclear energy, its possible uses, and perhaps most importantly, if generated, restrictions which should be imposed on it? Many regard nuclear as a green source of energy. But what do you think? Is it safer now, 6 decades after the event described above? And so, less likely to result in perhaps catastrophic accidents? Or not? Please do contribute your views. We are perhaps talking about a considerable energy source, certainly carbon-free. Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.